Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinnie Eastwood Show. It is now hour number 2, and we're going to go straight through from hour 2 to hour 3. Perhaps there might be a quick, sneaky WikiLeaks snigged in there at some point, but it's going to go straight through rather than thing, because my very special guest, Eric Rice, has to go home. All right? I don't have to say it twice. And we're talking about DRUGLAWED, the documentary. They've got a little thingy on Kickstarter there. And if you can't donate some money in order to finish this film...
It's not a donation. You're pre-ordering the DVD, the T-shirt. Have a look at the Kickstarter, and you'll see it's not just a gift. You're getting something for your cash.
All right. Well, in that case, go and purchase something for a product that is not yet made.
Well, no, the T-shirts, for those of you who are watching the podcast, which we may put online, this is the T-shirt, the official movie T-shirt I'm wearing right here. Screen printed by a very good artist, Dallas. Excellent screen printing on this T-shirt. It's a high quality...
I thought that was a TV show.
No, you're confusing that with some other kind of Dallas. No, the man's name is Dallas, and he's a screen printing artist. He's not a regular kind of screen printer. This man is sharp.
So he's not a ex-porno guy? He wasn't in Debbie Does Dallas?
No connection to that film.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm taking it in a terrible direction. And something that rhymes with direction. And when you talk about the movie, which is probably the whole purpose of it. Now, let's see if we can run through the film, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. You know, incidentally, we've got 120 minutes. We've got 120 minutes to cover a 100-minute film.
That's right, but we're going to cut that film down to 90 minutes, so that's why this 120-minute interview is going to rocket along at a huge pace, to give people a sense of the pace of the film when it's completed. It's a very dense film, but it's like a roller coaster ride, which you're feeling the complexities at every turn, because the story twists and turns at a rapid rate through the last 100 years of history, actually. Well, for example, the most recent turn was the full legalization of cannabis in Washington and Colorado. Basically, this puts the United States in violation of UN treaties which it itself crafted and which the rest of the world has signed. So if the United States can violate these UN treaties, then other countries, including New Zealand, can also, because obviously these are not binding treaties. So that's a massive game changer, and the number of countries that recognize that and change their drug laws could have a domino effect, which means the entire prohibition, not of drugs generally, I'm not that hopeful, but of cannabis, could fall over within the next 10 years.
10 years, you say? And how many years have we got of prohibition so far? Like 70?
Well, it depends if you take the starting point, 1906, which was when the first cannabis prohibitions were introduced, or 1937 when it was made federally illegal in the United States, or 1971 when Richard Nixon declared the modern drug war. So we're talking about just over 100 years, or the last 40 years if you're just talking about the modern drug war era.
The modern drug war era, I think it should be pronounced more correctly.
Yeah, it was a gigantic era. One of the most costly blunders in terms of public policy that's ever been. Possibly the most costly public error.
Can we eliminate the need for mistakes and possible quaffling and whatnot? It was done deliberately by specific scumbags for a very, very evil agenda, and it's very, very obviously fits the definition of a conspiracy, doesn't it?
It was indeed a conspiracy. If you look at Richard Nixon's conspiracy, it involves appointing a conservative Republican governor, Raymond Schaefer, who actually refused to co-conspire with Nixon, and published a report saying that marijuana should be decriminalized. So Nixon binned the Schaefer Commission's report, had Schaefer discredited, using the power of the other people who were tied to the Oval Office and the newly created Drug Czar office. And they created a set of drug laws that were in direct contradiction to what the Schaefer Mission's findings, very conservative findings, stipulated. So Nixon definitely gerrymandered the laws. He took the laws into his own hands. In fact, more than taking the laws into his own hands, he created laws which were then in his hands from that time until his demise as president.
He's got the drug laws
in his hands. No, let's not sing. This is a family-friendly show. We don't want the dogs howling in the background. But yeah, Nixon was a very evil character, and we shouldn't be following him blindly into the abyss, which is what we've been doing globally since the time he concocted the drug war fiasco.
Conveniently, he's dead, right?
It's convenient and inconvenient. I mean, if he was still alive, we could hold him accountable.
We could do a documentary about him called An Inconvenient Douche.
Have you used that one before? It's fresh. That was fresh, listeners at home.
Yeah, they get worse. For my haters, yes, there is more to come.
Yeah, Nixon, well, I don't know how familiar people are with Nixon, because he's been dead a long time. As you point out, he is dead. But Nixon had some great little personal stories involving Elvis Presley and the drug war, and conscripting Elvis Presley as a special agent of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. The irony being that Elvis was himself an alcoholic and pharmaceutical drug addict, and died as a result of ingestion of those drugs. So that was one of his PR stunts to get other countries like New Zealand. This actually worked, to get New Zealand on board with the drug war. So celebrities back then were doing what they're doing now in terms of serving the ruling agenda.
I heard that Elvis died for a couple of reasons, right? There's drug and everything. He wasn't a very healthy man, but allegedly
he was not healthy.
Allegedly he was whacked, all right, because when he was recruited, he was like real anti-drug and stuff like that, and then he just wanted to kind of infiltrate and do his part for the country and that kind of thing, get into the drug scene because a whole bunch of people invited him because he was freaking Elvis, And of course, if you're a massive big rock star, you get offered all the drugs and everything. So he offered himself to the US government, and they used him. The problem is he got so deep in that he started to realise that it was the US government dealing the drugs, and he was going to start talking about it, allegedly, and then he died. Conveniently.
That's interesting. I've been to his home, and I've visited his final resting place. I've seen the bullet holes in the TV, and he was definitely exhibiting a lot of signs of deep alcohol dependence, in terms of his violent and erratic behavior, shooting off firearms and so forth. He was definitely acting as an agent of the government. I don't know if we can ever prove your contention that it was an assassination, but
it's not mine. Yeah, there's a good dude, Stu Webb. He's been a government whistleblower for like 15 years or something.
No. It's not beyond the realms of imagination. But the government, and specifically the CIA, were definitely in the drug trade at that time that Elvis was overdosing. In fact, you see that time it was Air America, the heroin trafficking from Southeast Asia, that morphed into the Iran-Contra scandal. Once again, weapons and drugs involved in that, where a democratically elected Central American government was overthrown by a coup funded by cocaine, and the arms were supplied and the drugs were trafficked by the CIA under the command of General Oliver North, who actually confessed to doing this and later on got a show on the Fox News network. So that's how it rolls, man. Confess to major drug trafficking and arms trafficking and get a TV show as punishment.
Well, you know, you would have to deal with all of those television types, you know, sometimes.
That's true. That could be grueling.
They can be kind of, I guess the word really has to be scumbaggery just again, you know. There's just a general air of scumbaggery about mainstream media that I feel it's palpable, you know. It's like cockroaches crawling on your skin at night when you sleep.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've been through the door and I've seen the other side, and I think they're just human beings at the end of the day who don't understand the bigger picture. You know, I empathize with people in the marketing world as individuals, but and marketing and media. But in general, no. I think that these edifices are serving the purposes of a ruling cabal that does not have your spiritual and human needs at heart at all.
If anything, it's the direct opposite, isn't it? You know.
No, it is. It's a.
Well, people always argue, you know. They go like, "Oh, why would somebody be like so corrupt as to create an entire drug scheme that makes billions of dollars for private weapons contractors and creates an enormous black market by which the government can finance all its black secret ops?" I don't understand why somebody would do that. It just seems crazy. It's like, well, that's because you're not a criminally negligent psychopath.
Yeah.
Okay, you know. If you were, suddenly, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, well, the trust in government is astonishing, considering the fact that, like in the case of Oliver North, he confessed in front of a grand jury to his crimes under oath, and even then, there's no accountability or belief that the government is untrustworthy. That they're not capable of wrongdoing when they've confessed to it. So what haven't they confessed to? What is completely unknown and will never be known is beyond the realms of the imagination. But what we do know is damning enough on its own. What we've proven and what's already been confessed to.
Yeah. And you can't make this stuff up either. You know, even if I was to dream up the wildest, craziest conspiracy theory with all the bloody players and the length of it, I couldn't make it up as brilliantly as it has already been made.
No, these are masters of theatre on the global scale. I mean, look at the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which is the inciting incident of the drug war, because it was to crush the resistance to that war that Nixon crafted the drug laws in the way that he did. But the Gulf of Tonkin incident is a classic false flag operation, which Robert McNamara confessed to. The Secretary of Defense confessed that they'd made up the radio report of a torpedo attack on one of their naval vessels in the Gulf of Tonkin, that it was an absolute fabrication, and Robert McNamara admitted that, and nobody has held him or Henry Kissinger or all of the other warmongers, including Nixon, accountable, Lyndon B. Johnson. None of them were ever held accountable for war crimes. None of them were ever held accountable for misleading the public. None of them were ever held accountable for the hundreds of thousands of dead GIs, 50,000 dead GIs from the Vietnam War, hundreds of thousands permanently scarred, psychologically and physically scarred. You know, the atrocities that these people committed were, you know, on a scale of Hitler and Stalin. They're at that level, genocidal, ecocidal, sociopathic behavior on the global scale, and none of them have ever been held accountable. In fact, when Nixon died, all the other still living presidents and ex-presidents and president turned out to salute him as his corpse was lowered into the earth instead of being thrown to the pigs and eaten by pigs, which is what he deserved. So yeah, there's this hero worshipping that goes on towards the United States president and his aides and his generals and his entourage that is really bizarre. It's like almost a religious cult. And you know, how do you bring down an edifice of that size and of that reach? It's like a David and Goliath struggle that we fight.
I do believe you're right on this particular front. You know, like odds are set against us allegedly. I mean, we've got the numbers, but they got the technology and the brainwashing and the money and the history of it, and the whole public's just been educated basically since they first go into school to blindly obey authority.
Exactly. Schools are very similar to prisons in the way they're built, their architectural style, in terms of the way they're run, in terms of the way they are now surveilled, you know, with CCTV cameras, and that's basically how people begin their education as state programmable automatons, because it's very hard to get an independent syllabus, especially in the United States. So you're either going to be homeschooled, or you're going into this concentration camp of the soul, you know, where you will be instructed on how to serve economic growth and to fit in as a little wheel in this gigantic watch that is the globalized economy.
Yeah. It's a succubus of a syllabus, isn't it?
It is. It is very succubus. And and you know how many people out there can ever step away from their formative years and like begin to look at the world objectively? So if they get you from a young age, they get you from age 4, age 5, and they institutionalize you. Now, I come from a background where corporal punishment was part of the tradition. In fact, it was an integral part of how the school operated. You know, using a cane, you know, 6 of the best. That was a very painful experience, and humiliating as well, to have some sociopathic teacher with, you know, all kinds of unresolved issues from his own childhood hit you with a cane repeatedly on your buttocks. It can leave scars on your mind as well. So this is how 1,000 boys from my schooling days were treated for 5 years. Ridiculous. And that's kind of like the way governments, not to that level where corporate punishment is used, but hazing, other forms of physical abuse are still part of school routines, not just in America, but in a lot of countries. So, you know, we're teaching people to be bad, essentially, to be bad and frightened and retaliatory.
Yeah, the old public school started up in Prussia, I think it was, and they was quite surprised when they went to war with France, like this prior to the First World War, that they had all these kids that just lined up, you know,
Exactly.
to be bossed around by a guy in
They
uniform,
loved it.
you know,
They
absolutely
loved
loved
it.
it.
We had
And they
cadets at school.
resoundingly beat the French, and then the French and everybody else in the entire world says, oh my God, look at how easy it is to indoctrinate children to view the state as something worth dying for and giving up their lives willy-nilly. Let's institute that here. And then the first schools in the United States, they actually had to get rangers like on cavalry back to lasso children and drag them to school from their parents.
They actually kidnapped them. Is that I wasn't aware of that. That's
Oh yeah, man. Public
extreme.
schools are bitch.
Yeah, I remember from my school days when we had cadets, that was on Fridays, and you couldn't just go home and enjoy your weekend. No, you had to make fucking squads and march in formation on the rugby field up and down and do these drills like a sweaty mutant and listen to some doofus shout orders at you. And I think the only people who really enjoyed it were the doofus people shouting the orders. Everybody else hated it. But it was a kick for the guy in charge. And I think that's been a huge driver in a lot of people's lives, where during their school years they got to be captain of a team or class president or some other silly little meaningless accolade that gave them the approbation that they craved. And it's part of the way they're controllable now, because they seek that same approbation, status, through a fancy car or a job title that other people will gasp at in awe. And it's because at school he was told to value a certain thing. But if he had been homeschooled by me and in incidentally, I have some qualifications as a teacher, and I do teach children art and cartooning. So I have direct experience of this. If I get to educate a child, that child will grow up to be a free-thinking individual. When the state gets to educate your child, that child will grow up to be a consumptive conformist. And that's what we have. We have a population of consumptive conformists out there through the state education system.
Addicted consumptive conformists.
Yep, indeed. Addicted to many things, not just drugs, although drugs are one of the most overt things. Addicted to television, addicted to cheeseburgers, addicted to a lot of cheap thrills and instant gratification. And I'm just going to do a quick shout-out now to Madiba, my president, who died recently, Nelson Mandela. May his soul rest in peace. Madiba once said, and I'm going to say this in my Madiba voice, and this is not my Yoda voice.
This is not his more higher pitch voice. This is Madiba voice.
Not the Yoda voice, this is.
The Madiba voice is different from the Yoda voice, and this is the Madiba voice.
The culture of instant gratification